Joseph, I think that we should talk in somewhat more personal terms to give people an idea of your own development from the time that you came to the Düsseldorf Art Academy in 1961, because the situation was very much different in the early 60s. And could you explain how the Academy was and how your life was in 1961 when you first started teaching?
Yes, when I started teaching, the situation was another, because most students were only interested to become big artists, yes. Become free artists, personal, they were more interested in personal career problems in art and self-realization as free artists.
How did you come to the decision to start teaching at the Düsseldorf Art Academy? Why did you want to start teaching there? That was your first teaching job, wasn't it?
Yes, it was my first teaching. Because there was a demand from the academy for me to be a teacher, and I followed this demand. Yes.
They asked you?
Yes, they asked me.
Why did they ask you, do you think?
I don't know. I think there were a quantity of persons who had a knowledge of my methodology during my time as a student. There were older professors during this calling which had this knowledge of my methodology.
You studied as a student at the Düsseldorf Art Academy?
Yes. I was student 1948 to 52. I was student.
Just after the war then?
Same after the war, after my prison. And yes, 48 to 52. I was student, the same academy.
And then they decided to take you as a professor. Was that an unusual situation?
Yes, I think it was an unusual situation because directly after my calling to be a teacher, I had the first difficulties with my fluxus intentions. Therefore, the situation was a bit, I think, unreal, because all persons which called me to come, they had no very clear knowledge of my development between the time when I was a student to the time 61.
What happened in your artistic development there?
Yes, I was more and more involved in experiments to do with my first fat sculptures after 52, and experiments in small objects, and I was more and more interested in to give new theories, ideas. Yes, at the beginning of my whole theory of sculpture was more and more fixed.
Can you explain, describe an important work at that period? Let's say in the late 50s, when was the first fat sculpture?
Yes, I think the most important sculptures of this period were to see as a third documenta. You know.
What year was that?
The small fat sculptures from fat and wax sculptures.
When was that? What year?
Yes, the sculptures were shown for the people in the third documenta in 64, but the time when they were done, were between 52 and 58. It was shown after this time. It was more public because it was very unknown. I worked in the countryside near Kleve in a small atelier, and I was not very interested in expositions and all these things. I was a very unknown person.
So when they asked you to teach in the Düsseldorf Art Academy in 1961, they weren't aware of the development of your work. They didn't know exactly what you did.
Afterwards, they were aware of my development.
And they were shocked with the process there.
The first shocks.
And you started doing the first performances in the early 60s. What was the first performance? What was your first performance, would you say?
The first performance openly in the academy was a part of the Siberian Symphony with the dead hair and the piano pieces.
When was that?
It was in 62.
Could you describe it?
Yes, the description is very simple to give. The material was a big concert piano, and I worked on the closed piano with balls of clay and a bit of fat and 3 sticks of trees, and I made a connection from the piano to the blackboard. On the blackboard, I made manipulations with the dead hair hanging on the blackboard. And I played special pieces. I did special sounds on the piano. And afterwards I take the heart of the dead hair and take it on the wall, and then I make a description with chalk. So that was an action. It was not
an action.
It was an action.
The first action. One of the first.
It was the first action in the academy. And that it was at all one of my first actions.
How do you find to define an action? Is it different than the word performance?
No, it is not a difference. We used during this period the word performance, action, demonstration. Because my intentions were parallel and simultaneously mostly with the Fluxus movement people, yes.
Well, you
with
were...
Dick Higgins, George Machanas, and Nanjun Paik, and Dick Higgins, and Alison Knowles. And this movement, you know, were a bit against the other American style of activity in happenings, because it was more another character.
Similar to
not so much interested in a lot of material like Al Capo's acting or Wolf Rosdale's.
More personal, would you say? More personal?
Yes.
Less anonymous?
More personal, yes, and more, and not so much, perhaps with less using with big material, with very small actions.
The scale was different.
Yes, and very important thing is to say that most of these actors were not coming out from sculpture or painting, were mostly coming out from the interest of the sound, from music intentions, from modern music, outcoming from Ronald Feldman and John Cage's school and
your work too.
I was very interested in sound and these things. And therefore all the actions, especially the first actions, were accompanied and integrated with sounds and accords and...
But it was important that there was an audience there.
Yes, there was an audience, that's true.
And so therefore you saw yourself in some ways as an actor?
Yes, as an actor.
And that was a broadening of art, of the strict making something in the studio and presenting it. And there was an involvement of these people in the audience directly with you. At that time, did you talk to them, or was there a distance between you?
During this period, I talk not so much. Only when I talk in relation to the action, not directly talking.
More to yourself than to them.
More to myself and to the character of the action. But more and more from this time to now, I was involved to speak directly, not only in pictures represented in the action. I was at the same time parallel interested to give the audience or the spectators the idea or the theory more and more.
Behind the work.
Behind or parallel to the world. And now it is more the most weight now is to work with the ideas and not so much with imagination, with pictures.
There seems to be a paradox here, because on the one hand, you did something, let's say the early actions, even take, let's say, the Wuppertal one in 1964, in which you reacted to less to the people than to the materials and to your own self.
Surely.
Therefore, it was more personal.
Yeah.
And now, the intent is to communicate more, so it becomes more public.
Sure.
But yet your art, has become more personal.
Sure.
Because perhaps, I don't know why that is. Do you understand what I'm saying about this paradox?
Yes, it is a paradox.
Personal, public is a very pivotal point.
I'm very interested to work with this paradox character, because I'm deeply sure that the best effect is to work with few methods. On the one hand,
few methods.
Touch, yes. On the
just
one,
a few.
Yes.
Simple,
yes. The two methods, not to work only with one method. For instance, to have interest in clear communication with ideas, terms, and structures, or theory, or analytic statements, and so on. I'm interested to work with this, and on the other side with imaginations, very personally and very, I think, heavy to understand.
Give me an example.
Yes.
Personal imagination. In other words, your fantasies.
Yes, for instance, a Rasenstab, the small Rasenstab acting with the copper element and the felt corners and the felt corners.
Explain that.
Yes?
What specifically? Explain that piece.
Yes.
What did you do there?
At first.
In your Rasenstab.
In a Rasenstab is an acting with the fat corners, then with the felt corners and the copper element, and my iron plate under my foot, and the felt isolation for the ground, and the signatures on the floor, and this very poor material, and the action is not so
clear.
Yes, it is for me. It is very clear, and the form of the action is very clear too.
How is it clear?
The people, yes.
How is it clear?
The shape is very clear. The shape.
The shape in time
and in form.
In movement.
In movement,
and in making.
In time and in form, the shape is very clear. You can say it is classical. Yes.
Yeah.
But the idea, the people feels that the idea is
anti-classical.
Is anti-classical and it is difficult to understand.
So they misinterpret it. They don't understand. They didn't understand.
Yes, they didn't feel, but they didn't understand in terms and ideas. You can understand. You can have the reception. With feeling.
Yes, and that's one of the important points of your work, is it? You said that you understand more with your feeling than your mind. what you are trying to do.
And the people is touched in the first method with imaginations and
their imagination or your imagination?
no, my
so you are communicating
touched,
yes.
But they became touched very complex, not here, not only with intellectual, more in feelings and under-consciousness positions.
Do you think about what the public will think about your action when you plan an action?
Yes.
Do you think, well, how will they understand what I'm doing when I put fat under my leg?
Yes, surely. I make a thinking, but thinking is too small. Yes, it's more
speculation.
Yes, speculation, but you can say meditation and imagination and feeling with a deeper powers in the human being, and therefore I have an idea in what direction my action works.
So you can make a judgment after it, whether it was successful or not so successful,
yes,
whether it was clear or not.
Yes.
Do you ever repeat an action? Do you do one in different places, or do you always?
Yes, I did about, I think, 4 actions on different places. For instance, I did the Chief in Berlin and Copenhagen, and I did Rasenstadt in Vienna and in Antwerp, and I did the Siberian Symphony in Berlin and in Copenhagen.
Within a short period of time, a few months between them? Or
yes.
longer?
Yes, half a year. Another action during 14 days.
Yes.
14 days in Edinburgh.
What was that called?
Celtic sea action.
Could you describe it?
Oh, it's very, very difficult to describe.
Well,
it's very well described in the, interfunction, this description. I will give you the
no, but the people, just generally.
Yeah, it is a very simple shape, and it is in a...
What did you do? What actions did you do?
I was mostly on the floor.
Covered
clicking on the floor, on the floor. And I worked with signs, forms.
That you wrote?
The blackboard. I wrote it with chalk on the blackboard.
How long was the performance?
The whole performance is about 4 hours. And this performance is interrupted from actions with projectors, films, and mostly a film from Rannoch Moor, that's a district in Scotland.
Yeah.
A very lonely, empty, dreadful moor. Yes.
And are you in that film?
Yes, I am acting only with my hand and a ball of fat and the gelatine. And during this action, the gelatine has a big role during the whole action, because I grasped all the particles from gelatine from all walls. They were prepared before, the day before, in the whole hall.
You put gelatin. What is gelatin?
Gelatine.
Like
yes.
clay?
The elastic material.
I see, kind of plastic or...
Yes, but it is real gelatine.
Like jello.
Jelly.
Like jelly. Jelly, yes.
And you put that before in different places in the room.
And
one room or 2 rooms?
No, one big room.
One big room. And everyone was around in the room.
And I take a ladder and put it from the wall during 1.5 hours, because it was a lot of small particles. And I did it on a big plate.
One of the intentions in Celtic and the Fatbecca and other performances is to activate the whole space. You put the elements around.
From the whole space.
So you shape the space.
Yes.
When you shape the space, do you shape the people in the space?
Yes, surely.
Right. So they become a part of the action.
Yes,
they become like the fat.
Yes, surely. They are a part of the action.
So what do you bring to these people? How do you want them to, what realization or what consciousness do you want them to have during or after one of your performances?
Yes, I'm interested that the people have a feeling from a larger reality of their own personality than they mostly feel.
You?
Yes, that's the same idea. Most people have a consciousness of the personality, and they are educated in a culture of positivism and real rationalism, and they have no more or not enough connection with other powers of existence.
Other possibilities of thinking, even.
Other possibilities of thinking, no more enough connection with imagination, intuition, inspiration, no more connection with the whole soul powers or uprising will powers, and the whole metaphysical reality.
And how can you bring that to them?
My intention is to give another understanding of reality.
How can you do that?
Yes, through my action.
Through your action.
And my action works at first like a riddle, yes, or like a
something strange,
like a secret, like a strange, or like a yes, a riddle-like. And I'm really interested to give my actions these image character, this character.
Well, there is a religious element, isn't there? Because there is a religious element. You have the cross sometimes as a sign in the work.
Yes, because I mean that there is to add on our discussion before, because I'm interested in development of human thinking during Western culture from the beginning, the year zero, birth of Christ, and our present position in materialistic positivism. And I see that the cross is the most important sign, not only for Christianism in special. It is a change. It has a changed semantic importance in our materialistic culture, because the cross we have in all structures, like big buildings, like the addition of elements and the coordinating system.
So you like this religious?
What?
You like this religious element? You are happy about the religious element?
Yes, but I like the two ideas of the element. On the one side, the religious Christian semantic importance, and on the other hand, the positivistic. Was heißt Bedeutung?
Significance. Yes.
Because
so do they play?
I find that the modern materialism is a result of Christianism. Therefore,
and Hitler, a development out of it.
Because it is a result of Christianism.
Well, one could say that you're putting yourself on the cross.
Yeah.
You create a situation where the cross, there's a religious element, and you're moving yourself into position of God.
Yeah, sure.
You create what is happening.
Yeah, sure.
And you make the people come to consciousness.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
That's my intention. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
That's a very strong will on the situation.
Because I mean it is very important that the people has this other understanding, because the people has to feel that they have to go out from the only definition to work only with the earth condition. Because more and more the people has to go out from the earth. It has
to a spiritual.
Yes, and he has more to be and to become was heißt Vermittler?
Intermediary.
An intermediary position between materia and the spiritual position.
So therefore,
it's more the being who has to vermitteln, was heißt
To be intermediary or
in between.
Intermediary between the two.
So that's what you're doing. You're creating a situation, a space, where there are people, objects, and yourself. And by your treating the objects, the fat or the gelatin, you give the people a possibility of moving from a earth position to something in their consciousness to above that.
Yeah, sure.
What was the experience of seeing these people have a relationship with your work?
Yes, at first I saw that the people has an elementary demand for this kind of art, as you want to say, like this. I felt that the people were hungry for kind of art, make opening for other and looking in other positions of the powers of the world and her own inside reality. And I could really control the effect in the time.